Wall Street, the financial heart of the world. For the United States, its significance has long surpassed being just a street. You could argue that America's financial prosperity hinges on the stability and growth of Wall Street's capital markets. So, what if a terrorist event mirroring 9/11 were to trigger a global financial crisis? Jack, a PhD student in the UK, was living an ordinary day like any other when he noticed that all the students looked tense and were gathered around the TV. Following the crowd, he was horrified to see news of a terrorist attack on the Twin Towers playing on the screen. Listening to his friends' panicked discussions and witnessing the unfolding tragedy, Jack silently resolved to return home and join the military to protect America. And just like that, he abandoned a future that many dreamed of, took up arms, and went to Afghanistan. Thanks to his outstanding academic record, combined with his brave and decisive fighting spirit, Jack quickly rose to the rank of lieutenant in the Afghanistan war zone. But during an air assault support mission, an enemy rocket struck their helicopter. Though the captain did his best to maintain balance, he couldn't prevent the aircraft's inevitable crash. This attack didn't kill Jack outright, but it crushed his spinal cord and caused serious damage to his nervous system. It seemed he might never walk on his own again for the rest of his life. Jack survived, but he could only use crutches to laboriously perform physical therapy exercises. Without a miracle, his life might as well have ended there. Jack's rehabilitation specialist was harsh, not only prescribing grueling exercises, but also refusing to help him up when he fell. Kathy wasn't exactly a professional rehabilitation specialist either, but a medical student who needed credits. She came here to earn extra credit. At the same time, a mysterious man observing Jack from the second floor suddenly turned to ask the manager next to him. After learning that Jack had been in therapy for 8 months, he suddenly became very interested. Jack struggled to his feet with his crutches, preparing to take a painkiller that Kathy offered. But then he heard her make a small request, to wait 2 minutes, to try to endure the pain, and by enduring, avoid relying on medication. Witnessing this scene, Harper finally made his decision. He put on his military uniform and walked up to Jack. After introducing himself, he began to ask about his past studies and the papers he had written. Jack recognized the man because he had previously spotted Harper lurking on the second floor of the rehabilitation center. After answering the other man's questions simply, Jack curiously asked how he knew about the papers he had written. Harper quietly said it was because he was from the CIA. Jack clearly didn't believe him, just thinking it was a joke. Although Kathy's training sessions were very strict, the results were indeed noticeable. During this time, Jack was able to walk normally, even able to do some light jogging. But Kathy had to return to school to continue her studies. Jack had fallen deeply in love with the girl who had helped him escape this low point. The two made a promise that when he fully recovered, she would accept Jack's invitation to go on a date. Seeing Jack reborn, Harper finally stepped forward to express his intentions. He hoped Jack could join the CIA, return to school to finish his studies, and then go to Wall Street to investigate which companies were transferring money to terrorists. And all of this was so that America would never have to endure terrorist attacks again. Jack, who had been hesitant, decisively chose to join after hearing this. 10 years later, Jack was a core executive of a multinational corporation. Throughout this time, he had always assisted the CIA in investigating foreign funding sources. Recently, some unusual moves in the global economy have made him sniff out the danger related to the instability of international energy. The relationship between the United States and Russia was deteriorating. Representatives from the two countries clashed fiercely at the United Nations, and an economic war seemed to be brewing in the shadows. Jack proactively contacted his CIA colleague, relaying his concerns to headquarters. The two secretly met in the movie theater, taking advantage of the dim light. Jack requested that headquarters quickly arrange for a source of information in the Russian economic sector. Additionally, the Russian company that partnered with the multinational corporation had concealed numerous accounts in the United States. This was all the intelligence that the CIA needed. After handing over the information to his colleague, Jack left the theater. Though 10 years had passed, Jack and Kathy still weren't married. They remained in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. The next day, Kathy went to Jack's place. She intended to surprise her boyfriend, but accidentally found the movie ticket stub. This gradually made Kathy feel uneasy, especially since Jack also seemed distracted in the evening, constantly watching the news on TV. The US budget deficit was increasing, and the debt was ballooning, coupled with the political instability caused by international energy. The US dollar should have depreciated, but instead, it was rising. This didn't align with economic laws, nor did it align with current political needs. Jack sensed that someone was deliberately manipulating this. But Kathy, seeing his indifferent expression, thought he had found someone new. At that moment, Sherevin in Russia received a request for a secret meeting. He proactively waited and met Sorokin, a high-ranking Russian official. During their conversation, Sherevin realized that now was the best time to launch the operation. With the permission of the high-ranking official, this earth-shattering plan finally began to unfold. Jack also received a mission from the CIA to go to Russia to investigate the conspiracy of the multinational corporation. He went to the company, and with the excuse of inspecting the hidden Russian accounts, He was assigned to Russia as an auditing supervisor to review the accounts. Back at home, Jack told Kathy that he was going on a business trip, but she questioned why he wouldn't take her along. His unusual actions finally made Kathy unable to bear it. The two had a big argument over this. After a moment of hesitation, Jack decided that after the business trip, they would go to Paris together. MB had been waiting for a long time and finally picked up Jack. But when he saw the tall, burly bodyguard in front of him, Jack suddenly had a bad premonition. MB's skill in taking away his pistol made him even more uneasy. After checking into the hotel, looking at the spacious and luxurious room, he just walked to the window to admire the view when he saw MB's reflection in the glass, pointing a gun at him. Jack quickly ducked. Without waiting for questions, he overturned the wooden table and rushed quickly into the bedroom. MB followed closely, seeing that there was no way out. Just then, his pistol ran out of bullets. Jack seized the opportunity to hide in the bathroom, preparing to ambush the opponent, while MB reloaded the pistol, searching for Jack. Until he saw the dark curtain in front, he fired several shots into it, then jerked the curtain open. Unexpectedly, Jack wasn't hiding in the bathtub, but was hiding in the ventilation system. Taking advantage of MB's surprise, Jack jumped directly down from above. He grabbed the opponent's gun and pulled the trigger, smashing the decoration to escape the grip. Taking advantage of MB's fall, Jack crawled to pick up the pistol, but was strangled by the opponent. He fired a shot back. The bullet grazed MB's head and flew into the ceiling. The opponent, startled, released his hand while Jack prepared to shoot, but the gun was out of bullets. He resolutely rushed up, tackled MB, and plunged his head into the bathtub. The water rose, and MB couldn't resist because his position was restricted. When the water flooded his mouth and nose, the real killing began. Jack didn't care, still held MB's head firmly until the opponent completely lost his life. At this moment, he frantically walked out onto the balcony and reported everything that had just happened to headquarters. The contact informed Jack of the meeting place in the evening, then asked him to return to his hotel room. Jack carefully walked into the chaotic bathroom, looking at the corpse until the code signal sounded. Then he left the hotel, slowly walking toward the meeting point. On the way, Jack received a call from Kathy. Facing her concerned inquiries, Jack, seeing the suspicious taxi in front of him, spoke incoherently. He comforted his girlfriend while avoiding the taxi's line of sight, successfully reaching the meeting point. Harper signaled Jack to sit down and began the conversation. Jack discovered that some documents from the Russian business partners company were refusing the corporation access, and all the accounts recorded in those documents were U.S. government bonds. Combined with the current international situation, Jack suspected that someone was driving up the exchange rate of the U.S. dollar. If someone were to take advantage of a terrorist event at this time to sell off U.S. government bonds in large quantities, they could crash the dollar and the U.S. economy. At that point, with no real manufacturing industry as a pillar, the U.S. would face unprecedented inflation, which would then spread from the U.S. to the rest of the world. In other words, a second Great Economic Depression. Therefore, Jack wanted to check the computer information of Sherivan, the person in charge of the partner company, to confirm the specific date the opponent was executing the plan. This put heavy pressure on Harper, who decided to increase manpower to solve the problem. He handed Jack a pistol and appointed him as the lead agent for this mission. Jack returned to his hotel room and found that the room, which had been extremely chaotic, was now completely back to normal. Even the wall had been patched up in just 2 hours. He was once again amazed by the CIA's infiltration capabilities. Then he went to bed and sent a message to Kathy. Time passed quickly, and the next day Jack arrived at Sherivan's company headquarters. Facing this uninvited guest, Sherivan offered a polite greeting. Jack, under the guise of an auditing supervisor, requested to audit the hidden accounts. But Sherivan had anticipated this. He presented all the hidden account information, claiming that the accounts had been sold out. And as a representative of the partner company, Jack could know how much money the company had been making. As he spoke, the head of security for the entire building proactively appeared, seemingly to remind Jack that he should leave. Jack had no reason to inspect, but he still didn't give up. He extended an invitation to dinner, hoping to ease the relationship between the two sides. Sherivan agreed immediately, but requested that Jack bring his wife along. It was only then that Jack learned that Kathy had flown from the US to Russia. Jack rushed back to the hotel. He looked at Kathy, waiting with a suspicious expression, and finally confessed his identity as a CIA agent. At that moment, the key figure of the operation was in the church with his parents. When they learned that the operation would begin tomorrow, an ominous premonition immediately appeared on their faces. After the church service, the three immediately destroyed all evidence. But Konstantin looked at his parents, then pulled out a dagger he had prepared. Having dealt with these two burdens, he immediately went outside, heading toward the location to carry out the mission. However, a suspicious figure waiting by the road attracted Konstantin's attention. Under the pretense of asking for directions, and after approaching the person, he immediately pulled out the dagger hidden in his sleeve, stabbing it forcefully into the person's throat. After making sure the person was completely dead, Konstantin entered the car and confirmed the person's FBI identity. Meanwhile, Jack and Kathy were discussing the upcoming mission progress with Harper. Harper could take care of the security and access cards, but Kathy was required to engage Sherivan for 10 minutes. However, Jack didn't want his girlfriend to take the risk. Harper then bluntly stated that Sherivan's favorite thing was other people's wives. If Kathy didn't participate, Jack wouldn't be able to meet Sherivan. Reluctantly, he had to agree to let Kathy participate in the mission. On the way to the restaurant, Jack took out the ring he had carefully prepared and personally put it on Kathy's finger. Sherivan had been waiting for a long time. Finally seeing the two enter the restaurant, he stepped forward to greet them and led the guests to the table. Harper, who was always observing from above, finally saw him leave. Receiving the notification, Jack immediately began to act crazy. He pretended to be drunk, starting to talk nonsensically. Kathy was very angry and suggested that Cherie take her to the restroom. A CIA agent, ready in position, bumped into him by accident, successfully pickpocketing his wallet. Jack took out Sherivan's access card. After the two returned, he intentionally said that Kathy was materialistic and was preparing to leave him. This angered both of them, and they kicked him out of the restaurant. Jack walked away dejectedly. He immediately went to Sherivan's company. Thanks to swiping the card and the support of the CIA agent, he successfully broke into the building. He took the elevator familiarly to the office, and then found Sherivan's computer in the secret room. Jack plugged in the USB and began copying. But this quickly attracted the attention of the security director. He ordered a lockdown of the entire building and then told the secretary to contact Sherivan. But Sherivan was having an increasingly pleasant conversation with Kathy, so he ultimately ignored the secretary's phone call. When the information copying process was complete, Raymond also returned to the building with security personnel. The main elevator was no longer usable. Fortunately, Harper had planned ahead, cracking the code for Sherivan's private elevator and helping him leave the building through that route. The secretary, realizing that there was a problem, went directly to Sherivan's side and told him everything that had happened at the company. He immediately recognized the instability, looking at Kathy with a hateful expression. Sherivan took her back to the company building, where they met Jack, who had been waiting for a long time. A large security team tightly surrounded the two. However, after searching them, they didn't find any useful information on Jack. He sent people to follow them. Harper received the information and immediately sent people to decode it. Jack directly told Harper that the opponent had prepared 2,000 billion USD of US government bonds and would sell them all off tomorrow. Only by preventing the opponent's terrorist attack could this economic war be broken. Just as they were talking, a group of heavily armed soldiers suddenly rushed in, and everyone immediately engaged in a fierce battle. The leader seemed to feel that he couldn't overcome Harper's firepower, so he kidnapped Kathy and fled. Seeing his fiancée being taken away, Jack jumped down from the building, stole a car, and sped off in Kathy's direction. Harper, seeing that it was temporarily safe, turned to tracking Kathy's location to give Jack directions. The enemies constantly circled Moscow, then proactively got out of the car to allow Sherivan to get next to Kathy. Jack unexpectedly received a call from him. Hearing Kathy's screams, he was immediately consumed by anger. Seeing the target getting closer, Jack unexpectedly crashed into a truck that suddenly appeared. Seeing Sherivan nearby, he got out of the car, took a shortcut, and smashed his car window violently. CIA teammates immediately arrived, and everyone quickly rescued Kathy. Then Jack drove off. Time was of the essence, and the plane that Harper had arranged finally got everyone on the way. Based on the information displayed in the document, the police stormed the house, but found only a pile of burned ashes. Jack reminded everyone that Konstantin was an agent personally selected by Sherivan. There must be a special requirement. Thinking of this, he immediately sent people to investigate Sherivan's information, discovering that he did indeed have a son, but he had died when he was only 9 years old. However, the CIA personnel suddenly found a photo of Konstantin as a child looking exactly like Sherivan's son. After comparing, it could be determined that the two were the same person. Konstantin had arrived at his destination for the bomb. He stabbed the manager to death and used his documents to drive away from the company. Jack had now found a clue. Sherivan couldn't have faked the death certificate himself. After checking, they found information on the coroner. Jack discovered that this doctor was constantly receiving transfers from payphones near his home and checked the assets at the place where he called. The CIA found an abandoned warehouse. As expected, Konstantin was repainting the car inside, and the car was full of explosives, but when the police stormed in, he had disappeared. Jack tracked back from photos posted on social media accounts that Konstantin followed, and confirmed the final destination he was heading to was Wall Street in New York. Time was of the essence. Jack and Harper immediately boarded a helicopter and flew to Wall Street, beginning to assist with the evacuation of the crowds at the scene. Jack knew that the police had found painting equipment in the abandoned warehouse, so he paid close attention to every police car that passed by. Sure enough, he found a car that had been repainted abnormally. Without waiting, he immediately borrowed a motorcycle from a colleague passing by and frantically chased after the police car. He told Harper, Konstantin's real target isn't a building. Harper hung up the phone and immediately requested a street map. Meanwhile, Jack had followed in Constantine's footsteps, entering an underground tunnel. Harper finally realized that if the explosion occurred in the tunnel, half of Wall Street would collapse due to the massive shock. He immediately ordered the police to expand the evacuation zone. Jack was trying to pursue when Constantine suddenly swerved, causing him to crash into the car. It took him a moment to get up. Constantine looked at Jack lying on the ground and sped off. He plunged into the city's sewer system, and as he activated the detonator in the back of the car, Jack caught up and pushed him hard. Rushing water. The two began a fierce struggle on the water's surface. Jack glanced at the car full of explosives, his heart sinking. Constantine seized the opportunity to push him into the water and tried to punch him repeatedly. Jack took advantage of the moment Constantine lost his balance while throwing a punch, knocking Constantine into the water. Realizing that time was running out, Jack resolutely tied up Constantine, then drove the car away as quickly as possible. As a large number of police arrived at the tunnel, preparing to arrest the terrorist, Jack drove the truck loaded with bombs out. He begged Harper to help him clear a path, but because time was too short, Harper had absolutely no way. Jack could only swerve left and right to escape the Wall Street area. He locked the speed and then rolled out of the truck. The moment the truck plunged into the water, a deafening explosion erupted, and a massive column of water immediately shot up. Everything calmed down. Sherivan, hearing the news, felt his heart sink into the abyss. He went to a secret meeting and was shot dead by the other party with one bullet. Jack and Harper were directly commended by the president for saving Wall Street. Jack Ryan. Shadow Recruit is an American film released in 2014. If rating on a 5-star scale, I would say the character gets 4 stars. Viewers wanting to see this film as a sequel to the Jack Ryan series may be disappointed because, apart from reusing the name and identity, the film has no connection to the previous installments. Meanwhile, Harrison Ford's version of Jack Ryan gives off a more gentle and elegant feeling. As for the plot, the tightly linked details always have a vague sense of urgency throughout. The film is very neat, with almost no unnecessary details. Of course, to build the plot around American naivete, the plot seriously weakened the strength of the country. If Russia really sold off 2,000 billion USD of US government bonds at the same time, the US would absolutely not sit still and couldn't be as helpless as in the film. Based on this point, the plot only gets 3 stars. That's the end of today's story. Thank you for watching.